It's official, ladies and gentlemen, the Bleach manga series has come to an end, and it all ends with everybody popping out kids like a bunch of horny rabbits. Words cannot describe how I feel about the final chapter of Bleach, but I'm certainly going to try my best. While I don't think it was the perfect ending for the series, despite the fact that we get to see a lot of resolution with a lot of the main characters like Ichigo and all of his friends, we even get to see the return of some of his old high school friends that we haven't seen in a really long time. The core cast, Ichigo, Rukia, Inoue, Oryu, Chad, we really do get to see what they're up to and what they're doing 10 years into the future at the end of the Bleach series. But if you want to know what happens to, say, the Arankar, or the Vizards, or even some of the characters who are hurt in the final battle of the series and completely left for dead, like Kira, who had a massive hole in his body, you're not going to get any resolution like that. What you are going to get in this chapter is getting to see where the characters have ended up, and we also get to see the actual conclusion to the battle with the Quincy leader. That's right, just stuck in the middle of this chapter, we actually get the final portions of that battle after Ichigo had just completely cut him in half. Apparently, the Quincy leader's plan, as convoluted as it was to get rid of the concept of death entirely, to combine the living worlds and the spiritual world into one. This way he could create his very own brand new utopia where no one would have to fear death any longer, thus basically taking the entire challenge out of life. Hell, even Aizen agrees with this sentiment. Yes, Aizen apparently is still okay, and he's still strapped in his chair, and I think he's actually gotten kind of comfortable with it, because he doesn't seem to have a problem with it anymore. It's his role to just forever sit in that chair. And that's pretty much all the stuff that you see in Soul Society, but the best parts of this chapter is just getting to see where all of the various characters have come and where they are going. So let's just go ahead and start with all of them. First up, there's Chad. Chad looks so awesome in this chapter, and it's just an absolute shame that he has no dialogue here. You get to see him in a color panel at the very opening of the chapter, where you get to see all of the main characters in this big color spread, but apparently he is a boxer now. He is a fighter, a heavyweight champion, and that actually makes sense for a character like him. I do have to say, it's very jarring to see his hair completely slicked back Aizen style, where you can actually see his eyes for once, and he's just a bad-looking motherfucker. Chad was always one of my favorite characters, and I felt that, like a lot of the other side characters, and basically just the main characters of the Bleach series, he was underutilized in the final parts of the series. Like, he didn't really have, like, a good final battle. Like, he certainly had his moments, and he certainly had a few things to say, but again, he's another one of those characters they just didn't use all that much, but it was really great to see him in the final chapters. We also had Oryu Ishida, who is officially a doctor, which honestly makes sense, and he's a very busy man, so much so that he can't hang out with his friends, but he still manages to take a break at the top of the hospital, going up to the roof to watch the fight that Chad is getting ready to get in on his phone. So it's really awesome that despite the fact that he's not there, he's still getting involved with his friends and their lives. We also get to see the return of Ichigo's sisters. There's Yuzu and Karin, and they look very different. Yuzu is basically the closest to her original form. She just looks super adorable as always. But then there's Karin, who is just big, just stacked, massive. If there's one thing that Tai Kubo loves about drawing females, it's giving them gigantic melons. And that's what he does to Ichigo's sisters. I have to say, it is an absolute shame that we do not see his father at all in any of these chapters right here. Like, it's just so disappointing, because he's still a pretty mysterious character. I mean, we got a little bit of backstory on him, but I would have liked a lot more about Ishin. I would have liked to see him appear in this chapter right here, just messing with his son one more time, kicking him in the face, to get one of those big classic final moments. And then, of course, we have the big main characters. Let's start with Rukia and Renji. Rukia and Renji are essentially married and have a child, which I think is very fitting. I always imagined that those two would end up together. It was very obvious since the beginning of the series. A lot of people wanted Ichigo and Rukia to get together, and frankly, I just never saw it as a romantic relationship. They had a very strong sort of like brother-sister thing going for the two characters, especially the way they constantly just beat the hell out of each other and make fun of each other, which you're going to get a lot of those classic moments in this chapter, and that's another reason why I really love this one. It felt like classic Bleach, like kind of the stuff that we saw in the first part of the series. And it was just a total nostalgia trip, and it really took me back to the best parts of the Bleach series, when it didn't take itself so damn seriously with these big world-ending events. But Rukia and Renji, of course, do have a daughter who goes by the name of Ichika, who looks like the perfect combination of these two characters, and as much as I want to see more of this character in action, we're probably not going to get it, because this is the only time we're actually going to see this character. But Ichika is a Shinigami in training, very, very young, and just like Rukia and Renji, it looks like Ichigo has his very own son as well. He has his very own child, and of course, he got married to Inoue. That was just an inevitability. We knew that those two characters were going to end up together, and I'm really glad that the love story portion of the series was downplayed, because it was so obvious how it was all going to go down, with Inoue being basically the ultimate bombastic housewife, and Ichigo being the loving father who is running his medical clinic. And they have a son who goes by the name of Kazui Kurosaki, who at the beginning of the chapter is messing with Hiyori for some reason. Either that or Hiyori's just on the frickin' rag as usual, just super pissed off as always, getting mad at this adorable little kid. He looks like the perfect combination of both Ichigo and Inoue. Just like, he takes the best parts of their personalities and they put it into this character. I also really love the fact that he himself is also a Shinigami in training. There's a portion of the chapter where there's this like black hole that's opening up in his room, which is going on with conjunction with the actual flashback in this chapter with the resonating final power of Ewok, and he's reaching into it, and then apparently it just disperses, and that's when Ichika busts into his room claiming that she's a Shinigami, and then he reveals his Shinigami powers, which completely just freaks her out. And that's pretty much the end of the chapter. Presumably, it looks like these two characters are going to form another strong relationship, and they're going to go on their very own adventure. An adventure we will probably never ever see, and it's all going to be up for interpretation. And that's really what this whole chapter is all about. It's just the way different people are going to view it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of disappointment, because there are so many loose ends in the Bleach manga series. There are so many characters we never got back to. Where is Urahara? Why are we not getting anything from Urahara? What is up with the Arrancar? What is going on with the Vizards and their group? Are Hollows still around and fucking people up? There are so many questions whether characters are simply just alive or not, where they are, and it's such a shame that this series had to be cut short just because they weren't making a lot of money with it. And with that being said, the big announcement at the very end of this chapter is that no, the Bleach anime series is not returning, but there is going to be a live-action film coming out in 2018, and I just don't care about a live-action version of Bleach. I see Bleach strictly as an anime and a manga series. It's so stylistic that being able to pull it off in live-action and making it seem realistic, I just don't think it's going to work. There are some times when manga and anime mediums need to stay just that, and they don't need to migrate over to the live-action side of the force, if you will. What I will say is, despite the fact that this final chapter was not perfect, I still found myself enjoying it, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I do like these characters. I've been watching the Bleach series and reading it for over a decade. I've become very attached to all of these characters and the things that they've gone through, the growth, the development, the powers, the action, all of it has been pretty damn fantastic. Yes, it has been flawed, but then again, nothing is perfect. And of course, the Bleach manga series was far from perfect, but for what it was, I still got a lot of entertainment value out of it. So, what is the final rundown on the final chapter of Bleach? I liked the final chapter. It wasn't what I wanted, and I didn't get a lot of the resolution from the characters that I wanted to see with a lot of the loose ends, but I still enjoyed the ending for what it was. I liked getting to see where the characters were 10 years in the future. So heartwarming to see Rukia and Renji together, especially because in the last couple chapters learning that, you know, her relationship with Renji was strained for a while, and Ichigo essentially brought them back together, which resulted in them falling in love with each other and having a child who is presumably going to turn into a very powerful Shinigami at some point in the future. Not to mention just getting to see Ichigo, who again was pretty downplayed in this chapter. Aside from the moments where he's just messing around with Rukia, it was just classic old Ichigo, which is honestly the way way, I do like the character. There's all the side characters that finally returned, which I was really glad to see. You know, Chad was awesome. I wish we could have spent a little more time with Oryu Ishido, but honestly, it does make sense why that character would be doing what he is doing. And that's something that's also really important about this chapter. It makes sense where the characters are. There's just so many characters in Bleach that it's just impossible to show where everyone is. Getting to see Ichigo's sisters return was really great. They still have a lot of great personality, and I love their brand new looks. The return of Ichigo's classmates, who unfortunately, I'm a big Bleach fan, but I just do not remember these guys' names. The one classmate who constantly always tries to bump into Ichigo or like glomp him, you know, the Ichigo! The guy who always runs into him, like, that's really funny. He's obsessed with Rukia. That comes back. I thought that was great. It gave me a lot of laughs and just so much of nostalgia as I was reading it. As I was turning through the pages, I could, like, feel chills going down my spine as I was seeing all of these characters back in their brand new forms. It was great. And then, of course, there's the whole conclusion of the Ewok thing, or the Quincy leader, Ewok. You know, it bothers me that even to the final chapter of the series, I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce his name, if it's Ewok, if it's Juhabok. I always called him the Quincy leader, simply because I can't pronounce it, and frankly, I don't want every comment in the fucking video to be, it's pronounced this way, Corey. That's why I was waiting for the anime version, so that I actually, like, hear them saying it. So it'll give me a much better idea of what his actual name sounds like. But his plan was so convoluted that they really couldn't do much with it. Like, there's not much backstory on that character, and his plan was to sort of combine the living and the dead worlds together and get rid of the concept of life and death altogether. It's strange and it's weird. That's really the only way to put it. And I like that, you know, all the other characters in Soul Society were able to sort of put that stuff to rest and allowing Ichigo and his friends to sort of do their thing in the real world. I'm also really glad that Rukia and Renji returned. Really, that's probably my favorite thing, is that they were able to get away from the other Shinigami and hang out with all of their friends again. And then, of course, there's the two new characters. There is Kazui Kurosaki, which I can only say so much about the character because he has barely any dialogue in this one, but he just seems like a really nice composite of his parents. He's a super nice-looking character. Simple as that. It looks like he inherited a little bit more of maybe his mother's personality. And then you have Ichika, who is the daughter of Renji and Rukia, who, like I said, just really exudes so much personality when compared to Kazui. Looks so much like his parents, the perfect combo of these two characters. And I was kind of hoping maybe we could see their cool Zanpakuto. They really only seem to have, like, just the swords at this point. But I like the fact that Kazui's outfit looks a lot like his dad's, like, especially the one that you see at the very end of the series. It's very common for a lot of these long-running shonen series to end, like, by showing, like, a time skip and showing them having a family and stuff. Like, we saw that in Naruto. We're seeing it now here in Bleach. And it's heartwarming, to say the least. It leaves me with a good feeling, and that's definitely the best thing about the final chapter. But it's an extremely flawed final chapter, but only because there is just so many things which are just left on the cutting room floor that we're never ever going to see. That being said, as a Bleach fan, and taking this for what it is, I'm still pretty satisfied, and the Bleach manga series is done. It's really hard to believe that that's actually how it's going to be going down. I first started watching Bleach in anime form, like, years ago. Like, even before it was on Toonami. Like, I always used to, like, download the old Japanese episodes with the subtitles, and I started watching it because I started getting into anime again. This was, like, kind of in the early 2000s. Like, I discovered Naruto, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of like the next coming of Dragon Ball, even though we know it's definitely not. But Naruto is still great. But Bleach was sort of like the next show that I started, like, latching on to. To me, it was like a more hardcore version of Naruto. It's like, this is a slightly more mature story, and I really loved getting into it. I loved the characters and the powers, and the anime version was great. It was really atmospheric. The music was really cool. The action was fantastic. And then when the anime version finished up, I was so disappointed, because I was like, damn, this means I'm going to have to start reading the manga version now. And I do like the manga version. I don't like it as much as the anime version by a long shot. And I can say that for a lot of different anime and manga adaptations that I've watched over the last couple of years. But I just always was attached to the anime version of Bleach just a little bit more. But I still got a lot of enjoyment out of seeing the final arc and seeing all the new characters who were introduced. A lot of insane battles. I mean, the final arc of the series essentially is just watching one battle after the other. Just simple as that. With a little bit of training arc sprinkled in, and of course introducing new characters like Squad Zero and the Soul King. I wonder whatever the fuck happened to the Soul King? We didn't get any resolution with any of that stuff, and that seemed like really important. All of that stuff seemed really important, and ultimately, at the end of the day, that is the most disappointing thing about the Bleach series, is that we're not going to get resolution to some of our final and favorite parts of the series. But still, like I said, there's still enough good in this chapter to at least get some enjoyment out of it. And I always like to end on a high note. And, I think the final moments with Ichigo's son and Rukia's daughter was really fitting. Kind of like a reflection on the entire series in general, especially how it began with Ichigo meeting Rukia for the very first time. So everything sort of came full circle in that sense. And honestly, it just made me feel good. It wasn't perfect, but I still got so much enjoyment from the Bleach manga series, the Bleach franchise in general, and I'm really interested to see what this live-action movie is going to be about. I don't have a lot of high hopes for it, and I still pray that the anime version is going to return. I want the final arc to be animated. I want to be able to have the entire collection in anime format, so this way I can just watch it all as opposed to just watching some of it and reading the last portion of it. If it comes to it, I will purchase the last arc all in manga form, just so I can have like a complete collection, but I really didn't want it to be like that. What I will say is, this is it, guys. This is the end of the Bleach series, and I just want to thank all of you so much for watching all of my Bleach manga reviews. I've been reviewing this series for a long time. Like, I've been starting since the very final arc of the series, and this arc has gone on for, like, the last 4 years. It's been insane, to say the least. And there have been good times, there have been bad times, there have been funny times, and a lot of enjoyment. I've loved interacting with you guys and hearing your comments and your stories and how you got into the Bleach series. And I want to hear from you again. This is your final opportunity to tell me what you thought about the finale of the Bleach series. Tell me about your favorite moments, who your favorite character is, what you hope they could have resolved in the final part of the story, and what you hope to see from the future of the Bleach franchise, because there is the possibility that it could return in the future. Aside from just this live-action movie, the anime might return. We might get a spin-off manga all about Ichigo and Rukia's kids. There's so much possibility for the future of Bleach, but for what it is, I still think it was a pretty stellar series that you should check out if you're into cool action and some really infectious characters. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on my journey through the Bleach manga series. If you guys want to check out any of my previous reviews of the Bleach manga, make sure to look for the playlist on our channel. Remember, that's Super Kami Guru 9000, SKG 9000, the best damn anime and manga reviewers on YouTube. Make sure and check that out. Thank you all so much for joining me on this amazing journey. I'm getting all teary-eyed just thinking about it, but the future is bright. There's still a ton of anime and manga for us to look at, and we're gonna dive right in. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby. Now you feel like #1, shining bright for everyone, living out your fantasy, the brightest star for all to see. I'm gonna miss you, Bleach.